G'day, I'm Dylan from Red Cymbals, and this video is just to give you some helpful hints and suggestions on how to choose cymbals. When choosing cymbals, there are a few factors you need to consider. Actually, there are quite a few factors you need to consider. Size and volume and tone and the weight of the cymbal, the finish of the cymbal, the genre of music you're playing, the volume you want out of your cymbals, the type of bell and the shape of the cymbal you want, as well as whether you want your cymbals to be B20, B10 or B8, hammering and lathing styles, and of course, choosing stacks and effect cymbals. So here we go, I'm going to break it down for you. Size of cymbals is the first place you kind of want to start with cymbals. The bigger your cymbal, the lower the pitch. The smaller the cymbal, the higher the pitch. So if you're looking for cymbals that have deeper tones, you want the bigger cymbals. If you want cymbals that cut through more, you probably want to go smaller. So for example, with hi-hats, 12, 13, maybe 14-inch hi-hats have a lot more cut to them. They will be brighter, they might have a bit more sizzle to them. Whereas if you start to get into 15, 16, 17, 18-inch hi-hats, the larger you go, the lower the pitch, and generally the less pronounced kind of chick sound you get, the less sizzle you might get out of them, and you increase the warmth and the depth of the tones from the hi-hats. The size of ride cymbals is really important as well. I used to play a 20-inch ride cymbal, but now I'm up around a 24, sometimes a 22. 26 is great, but it can get a bit out of control. So again, the bigger the size of your ride cymbal, the lower the pitch that it's going to have. So if you want a bit more ping, then I would get a weightier, say 20 or 22-inch ride. If you get into a heavier 24, it's all good, but I feel as though the overtones of a 24-inch heavier ride can get a bit too much. I feel like, this is my own personal preference, but I feel like a 16-inch crash is kind of like a big splash. A lot of people generally will start around the 16-inch crash size, and a standard configuration would be 20-inch ride, 16-inch crash, 18-inch crash, 14-inch hi-hats. So the bigger the crash, the more wash, the deeper the tone, and it depends on the style of music you're playing. But they do have to be played a little bit differently too. You can't play a massive crash and be smacking into it, because there's a lot more real estate, a lot more metal, and obviously it puts a lot more pressure on the bell of the cymbal, because you're hitting a large piece of metal with this area here mounted on a cymbal stand. So you do have to play large crashes differently, and large cymbals in general. One thing you may want to consider when buying cymbals is, what is your intended purpose for those cymbals? Is it because you want to play in a loud band? If you want to play in a large stage, then you may want to consider getting cymbals that have more projection to them. So a brighter tone, say for example our Heavy As, or our Bright Hybrid series, or Fire series, maybe even Vertical series. So they will have more of a presence to them. Whereas something like this, the Vertical Raw cymbal, it won't be as loud and won't cut through a wall of guitars as well. But if you're wanting to play quieter, like jazz or some other style of music where you need a lot of dynamics and you need to be able to play really quiet, but also be able to play dynamically loud as well sometimes, then you may want to consider darker cymbals. Weight is a really important consideration for cymbals, because the heavier cymbals are, the brighter they will generally be. The more they'll cut through, the more ping you'll get from them. The lighter they are, then you're going to get more wash, you're going to get darker tones. And of course, the thinner the cymbals, the more buttery they will be, the more they'll flex like the cymbal. But if you don't want cymbals that have a low, dark, deep tone, then you may want to consider getting cymbals that are a little heavier. For example, with weight, a 16-inch pair of hi-hats, if you want them to not cut through as much, you want them to have a bit more of a wash, more of a feathering to them, then I would look at a lighter top and a slightly heavier bottom. So for example, something like 1,000 grams to 1,100 gram top, and then maybe a 1,150 or 1,200 gram bottom. But if you want a bit more chick in your hi-hats, then you may want to consider a heavier bottom cymbal. So weight really refers to the lightness, obviously, of the tone of the cymbal, how long it will stick around, the decay. So a heavier cymbal, the decay will roll off a lot slower. The cymbal sound will stick around for longer. But also weight also relates to the darkness of the cymbal, or the depth of sound. Tone and finish are kind of linked together. There's this correlation between the two. So if you want a rich dark tone, then you want to think about the type of finish. If you want your cymbals to be bright, then you want to go to a brilliant finish like this one. But if you want your cymbals to have a richer, darker tone, then you want to go a darker finish, thinner cymbals, more hammering, less lathing. If you're looking for a drier tone in cymbals, then this type of finish is really great with a raw bell. Sometimes you want to make them just a fraction heavier, but also just have a dark finish, maybe both sides of the cymbal, so you get this restraint, I suppose, from the attack of the cymbal. Here's a really good question. Have you ever been told you're too loud, or heard the comment, the drummer's too loud? I mean, it's a kind of a silly thing to say, really, because the drummer is too loud. Okay, which part of the drummer, or which part of the drum set, I should say? Is it the snare drum? Is it the kick drum? Is it the toms? Is it the ride cymbal? Is it the bell of the ride? Is it the china that they've got set up? Is it the effects cymbal? Is it the crash? Is it the ride? Is it the hi-hats? There's so many factors that go into volume control in cymbals and in the drum kit. So you can't just say the drums are too loud, because on the drum kit there are several instruments as part of one instrument. So a snare drum's an instrument, the bass drum, toms, floor tom, the cymbals, each individual cymbal is an instrument as well. Have you ever thought about, though, practicing quieter? I once had a professional drummer come up to me. I was doing a bit of a jam on a drum kit at school at lunchtime, and he said to me, have you ever thought about practicing quieter? And usually I practiced back then at 100%. I didn't really think about different dynamic levels. So one suggestion is maybe think about playing quieter. Playing with passion and energy does not equal hitting the drums harder. In fact, you can play with a ridiculous amount of energy and passion and be playing super quiet. So volume, passion and energy, they don't correlate. So when considering the sort of volume you want from your drum setup, obviously you have to start with what size do I want, what sort of weight do I want, what sort of tone do I want? Do I want the cymbals to be loud and to project, or do I want them to be a bit more restrained? And therefore, then you have to play accordingly. So don't buy quiet cymbals, don't buy dark cymbals and then hit them harder because you want them to be louder. That's a recipe for disaster, for the cymbal anyway. Another consideration for choosing cymbals would be the genre of music you play. At Red, we do have a wide range of cymbals that are available because we're trying to, I guess, cater for different styles of music, different sounds that people want, different tones. You don't want to buy thin, dark cymbals for a gig that's requiring loud music, loud cymbals, loud drums. And the same goes the other way too. If you need to play at a really wide dynamic range, it's probably a bad idea to buy cymbals that are going to be super loud. So for example, rock music, you may want to consider the Bry Hybrid series, or Fire, or the Heavy As series, or the Hackelit Signature series, also very good. If you're wanting to play a style of music that's got a wide dynamic range and it's not always loud, but you need to be able to play down really quietly, but also up super loud sometimes, you may want to consider a darker series like the Dark series, or the Vertical Raw series, or maybe even Melbourne. The shape of the cymbal is really important, as well as the shape or the size of the bell. So the bigger the bell, the more ping you're generally going to get from the cymbal, and more pronounced the bell, obviously the more ping you'll get because it creates more of an umbrella shape. But with a cymbal like this one with a flatter bell, it has a flatter shape to it, therefore you're going to get more wash. So sometimes people have commented that cymbals are a bit too washy. And obviously if you mount a cymbal flat like this and you're striking it with the shoulder and the tip of the stick, you're more likely to get wash out of it. Whereas if you angle the cymbal, particularly the ride, obviously you're going to be striking it with more with the tip and less of the actual shoulder of the stick. So the other thing too is to think about playing across the cymbal rather than playing straight through it. It'll also reduce the damage that you make to your cymbal. So if you mount a cymbal flat and you're hitting it straight on the side like this, then you're more likely to damage the cymbal as opposed to putting it on an angle and playing across it. The other thing about heavier cymbals are that they will give you a heavier bell, so they'll give you more ping and cut to your bell. But if you want a thinner cymbal that's washier, you are going to generally encounter a bell that's not as thick and therefore won't give you a real traditional ping and attack from the bell. Hammering is also an important consideration too when purchasing your cymbals, because the hammering style will really determine the sound or the tone of the cymbal. So these bigger hammers that you can see in this cymbal will give it the cymbal more of a trashier kind of sound. So hammering really relates to how much trash or whether you want to clean a sound from your cymbal. So the more hammering, the more it increases that kind of trashiness to a cymbal, but the less hammering you have, the cleaner the sound. Another important consideration when buying cymbals is the type of metal. So cymbals, you might see B20, B10, B8. What the B stands for is bronze, but then the number relates to how much tin is in the cymbal. So a B20 cymbal like this one has 80% copper, 20% tin. A B10 has 90% copper and 10% tin. A B8 cymbal has 92% copper and 8% tin. This is also not a hand-hammered, handmade cymbal. It is machine made from sheet metal. It's been machine pressed, machine hammered and machine laid. This one actually feels a lot heavier. This cymbal, for example, is a B20 cymbal, so it has 80% copper, 20% tin. It's been cast as well as hand hammered and hand laid, not machine made. So there's a really big difference. You can easily tell when you hit a cymbal like this, or if you hit a B8 cymbal, you can tell immediately the difference between the two. There's just a different kind of tone, a different kind of sound. You get a lot more butter and wash and a darker tone out of a cymbal like this, whereas you'll get more ping and maybe more stick definition, but not necessarily pleasing to the ear. There are so many different types of cymbals, from hi-hats to crashes to rides, but there are some others too, such as splashes, chinas, effect cymbals with ones with holes in them. But one of my favorites is a stack. Stack cymbals are literally two cymbals stacked, or three or more cymbals stacked on top of each other to create a different kind of effect, more of a snappier sound. I particularly like using effects splashes and effects chinas. So I put the effects splash on top and the effects china underneath, and it makes a really cool snappy sound. But you know, it's really up to the ear of the beholder, so you can experiment with all kinds of different sounds. Thank you heaps for watching this video. I hope that I've given you some helpful hints and suggestions on how to choose cymbals. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out via email if you want, info@redcymbals.com. Jump on our website or go to our social media and feel free to drop me a DM in there. My name's Dylan. I'm here to help you choose the right cymbals for your sound.